Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mechanical Music Podcast. My name is Skira. We're on episode 9 now. I hope you've been enjoying what we've been doing. It's been a crazy couple of weeks of late. We've had some amazing releases from the likes of Acerbic, Marax, Carl Shorts, myself. It's just been a real whirlwind of emotions and fun. And we've still got plenty in the tank. We've got loads of great interviews that we're going to be bringing you. We've got loads of great interviews that we're going to be bringing you. This week's no exception. Caught up with this artist a couple of weeks back. We're supposed to bring this to you, but it's been so crazy. We've had nothing but a huge steam train of things to get through, releases and promotion and all sorts of stuff. I'm actually going to be in Europe for the last half of the month, so I'm not going to be around to be producing podcasts and all the rest of it. So I thought this would be a really good idea to release another great interview for you, just so you've got some content to get your teeth stuck into until I get back. It was absolutely fantastic to be able to catch up with a really great artist and a lovely guy, Alex, who is, of course, Balrog. Those of you who don't know Balrog, he is... he's the Groovemeister General himself. He really he sets the standard when it comes to 16th percussion techno. I absolutely love his style. I really do enjoy watching him DJ, and I look forward to every new release that he has coming out. The music is really top notch. He is an absolute perfectionist, and that does come across in his music. It's just a brilliant artist and a great guy to be able to interview and to catch up with. So here we go then. This is my interview with the one and only Balrog. I hope you enjoy it. How are you, my man? Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming, mate. So I've got the first question I want to ask you. Are we talking Balrog Street Fighter, or are we talking Balrog, that massive thing out of Lord of the Rings?
Yeah,
Which one is it, bruv?
Lord of the Rings.
Is it? Okay. I was hoping you were going to say the boxer, because he's badass, man.
Yeah. No, that's slightly before my time.
All right. Okay.
Lord of the Rings is technically.
Am I showing my age now?
Yeah.
Like my favourite game growing up, that was.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's Lord of the Rings.
Right.
I'm a big fan. I'm a nerd at heart. So.
Yeah. We all are, man. Creatives and nerds. It's what we're born to do. I'm all for like fantasy stuff. When Game of Thrones started doing its thing, what was that, like 10 years ago now? More, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like 12 years ago. I don't think you saw me for like 5 years. It was just the only thing I ever wanted to do was just sit and watch Game of Thrones. But it's proper epic. You got to give it its credit where credit's due.
I remember when it was first out on Sky Atlantic, and I remember we had just got Sky. And I remember we got Sky specifically because I wanted to watch it. And it was like, I've seen Sean Bean in it. And the only thing I'd seen Sean Bean in before that was Lord of the Rings. So I was like, I need to get on this. And yeah, it did disappoint, although towards the end it certainly...
It gets a bit funny. Or like any time I'm watching anything where somebody gets pinned to the ground and has molten gold poured on their head for a crown, you got to wonder what's next, haven't you? So, mate, you've been doing huge things recently, huge things. Give us a little bit of a rundown of what's been kind of going on in your world of late.
Yeah, well, back in the last year, I had a lot going on. I did Trezor end of summer, and then did Fold with yourself down there with Hydraulics. And yeah, it felt like I was really flying, to be fair. Like, those were two massive goals, particularly Fold has just been a real goal to play there.
The venue itself, or the
I just think I think it's the best club in the world. I mean, as far as what I've experienced, which isn't actually a whole lot, but in terms of what I've been to, it's hands down the best. The sound is fantastic, and I think the way it's run, the ethos behind it is amazing. it was always a big one, so that was huge for me. And then I went to India, which was a bit mental, to be going
Yeah,
out
tell us
there.
about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. It kind of came about because my agency have got a few connections there, and they were always quite keen for us to get that going, in terms of getting out there. And then, yeah, it just kind of happened out of nowhere. Um, it was kind of a little bit rushed, and so the parties were not as busy as I had hoped for at the start. And then in the mid range, I went to Goa, and I was meant to do 2 or 3 in Goa. And the night I arrived, they changed the laws on outdoor music. And so all my events were going to be outdoors, and so they essentially had to cancel all the events because they were going to have to push them into the day, and they were like midweek, and nothing was going to actually
No
be
way.
able to be done. So yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. But then the last one I played was really good. It was really busy. So yeah, it was good. It was a good experience. It's a very different, um, obviously, culture and club culture out there.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was good. It was a good time.
absolutely
And then
fantastic.
yeah, so I came back from that, and was on a bit of a high from doing all that. And then this year's just been a bit flat, really, in terms of the start of the year. Not a huge
Mm.
amount going on.
I mean, you have
So yeah,
got some that you've had some really good parties. I mean, I was just looking at some of the parties you've been kind of involved in. You mentioned Tressa. There's a couple of others that you did in Germany, wasn't there? There was the Synoid party.
yeah, yeah.
How
So that
was
was another
that?
one that, yeah, that was amazing. I mean, that's the second one I've done with those guys. And I was in the second room this time, so it was like quite a different vibe. Like it's at RSO, and the main room is like a very big, long hall, and then the
Yeah.
second room is like a much smaller, intimate room. So it was very different to the first one. But yeah, I mean, it's always good. The parties are amazing, good crowd. Yeah, it's different energy out there, different
And they love
gravy.
your energy as well. That's the thing. They love that kind of techno, and that's always a real plus, isn't it? When you know you can find a home for that sound. Because I've got a very similar sound to yours, and sometimes I feel like it's quite hard to find a real kind of heartfelt home for that kind of percussive style. But
Yeah,
it works so well in Germany, especially Berlin, doesn't it?
yeah. I think that's kind of one of the problems that I have here is that I've got quite even within techno, it's quite almost niche-ish. It's not kind of like,
It is now, yeah.
yeah, it is now.
It
Yeah, I suppose it
wasn't.
used to
We were
be.
doing
Yeah, yeah,
fine, you know.
yeah, yeah. So I suppose that's one of the things that I'm finding here is that what I want to play is not big here at the moment, but it's still big in Germany.
Yeah,
So um, they're very receptive to it. Saturn, I'd always give you the freedom to play for 3 or 4 hours, so you can do a lot of sort of moving in and out, which is what I like to do. I don't like to sort of stick into one area. I like to
linear.
move into
Yeah.
different areas. So that's why I enjoy those parties. And yeah, I'm hoping that I can get out there again this year and do one.
Mm.
Um,
That come for your agent as well, did it?
with Cyanoid, I've had a good relationship with Chris Assierate, who runs it, and also
Mm.
Tham. Sent them a lot of music over the last few years, and done a mix for them. And so they were quite keen to get me in for the
Cool.
first one, and then already had a kind of little bit of a relationship, and then they were open to getting me in for the second one. So
Yeah.
with all those things, I'm playing alongside a lot of you know what I would consider more sort of popular artists at the moment. So I'm always grateful for them giving me the chance to get involved. Really.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you've worked with a lot of really good names. I was just looking at your top 10 here. Redosa, you and Redosa did a. Uh, so names not down. That's the old classic, is it? That's the old classic, the bouncer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I actually haven't heard it, so I'm really sorry, but I will go and have a listen to that.
Yeah, that did really well for us. That was cooked up in one afternoon. I went over to Manchester and spent some time with Mark, and
Oh, up at
we
his
went to the
studio there,
studio.
yeah.
Yeah. He's got a great setup there with his Make Me a DJ
Make me a
stuff.
DJ because Jack works there as well, doesn't he? From
Yeah,
Cusp. Mm.
yeah, and yeah, we just set up shop for a couple of hours and came up with that. I took some stems with me, and I had that sample that I found like a sample pack with loads of old sort of rave vocals on like
Right.
the original samples they'd become from.
Yeah.
So I took a few of them over with me, and it just sort of rolled out and happened quite organically. It was really good fun, and then yeah, it got picked up by Amelie Lenz, and she played it a load, and then obviously we released it with Mark on Moments in Time, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's done really
That's fab, man. Yeah, no, it's a. I mean, some of the names you've been working with have been fantastic, and of course you've got remixes from your friend of mine, Henry, Dave the drummer.
well.
A couple of other real bangers as well. Benji 303's done a remix for you as well.
Yeah,
What
Tasley does a lot.
what's have you got a particular EP that you're like really super proud of that you just kind of like you just think I'm really happy with that? I know you're a creative, so obviously we're never happy with anything we do. But
Yeah. Um, I don't know. There's the one I did with Green Fetish, which is that one, the top one there.
yeah,
Um, that was one that did really well for me. There was a few tracks on that that were picked up by a lot of big artists and played a lot, and it's still getting played now. So that was really, I was really happy with that because I spent a lot of time on it, because I was working with Mickey Knox, who runs Green Fetish, and he
mm,
uh, gives a lot of very like in depth and good feedback. And we spent a lot of time making sure everything was really tight and perfect on it. So I think that's probably the one where I can look back at it. It all had the theme around like Blade Runner and stuff, and it had a lot of samples from Blade Runner, and I sort of tried to recreate a lot of like the synth sounds and
sort of
stuff from
synthwave
the
sort of
film.
vibe. Yeah,
Yeah, so I would say that's probably the one I'm most proud of. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm quite a perfectionist, really, and so
mm.
everything I put out, I'm pretty happy with. Although I released a lot of stuff when I first started out that I wish I hadn't, but it's all part of
It's
it.
just I think it's a producer's curse, isn't it? It's if we had a magic wand, we could just wave it and get rid of half the back catalogue that exists in this world that has
Yeah,
our names attached to it.
yeah.
It's just
I mean,
one of
I'm
them
still
things.
getting rinsed by labels who I released with very early, who are still like re-releasing stuff that I've never signed any contracts for,
That
never given
sucks.
the approval for, and just never been able to stop Beatport putting
No.
them up. But every year they
On the
release the
one,
same.
the compilations that they do, those
Yeah, it's
LWs.
like they'll just do a new compilation, like a hard techno compilation, and then it'll appear on there. And yeah, I've
And you go,
tried.
no, not
Yeah,
again.
it just winds me up because they're also using old versions of tracks. There was places where I sent pre-masters to, and they took the pre-master and released it without my consent on anything.
Sorry,
So
say that again. They released the pre-masters instead of masters.
yeah, there was a few years ago there was a label called
Oh, we're getting into naming and shaming now, ladies and gentlemen.
Techno Techno something. But anyway,
Don't know something.
they were releasing loads of people's tracks, and they were doing really well. They approached me. They were like, "Do you want to release a track?" I sent them the well, it was like a rough master,
Yeah.
and then didn't hear anything back. And then like 2 weeks later, it appeared all over their Soundcloud and stuff. Contacted the
Mm,
guys. They completely ignored me. Um,
really?
and yeah, and there wasn't really much I could do about it. So it kind of instilled in me the being a bit more protective about
Yeah.
your stuff, really, because during when I was first starting out, I was very like blasé about sending music out, sending it to anyone, didn't really care or anything. But then as soon as you realise that people don't have the respect that you would expect and that
Yeah.
I would show to other artists, because a lot of they don't seem to be as prevalent now, but there was a lot of labels just sprouting up out of
Sausage
nowhere,
factories, we call them.
100%, and just like really bringing in artists, like unknown artists, and just pounding out all these tracks and not really giving anything back to the artists. And
Mm.
it's literally just, you know, they're just money making machines. Like I say, it's just a factory of tracks basically. So
Yeah, yeah, just over and over and over again. I know some. I mean, I actually I don't mind some of the compilation things that happen from the distributor. They're not the end of the world, but I have had a few where, like you said, there's been tracks that you just would rather they weren't out there, and then all of a sudden, not only are they out there, but now you've got them re-releasing them and trying to trying to get them back into the system, which is never fun. But
yeah, no, and it's almost like they're, you know, they're taking the piss really. And
yeah, yeah, it does feel that way. Yeah.
so yeah, I had a few experiences like that, and that kind of was why I decided to start my label as well, because obviously I
Yeah.
wanted to avoid all those, you know, those issues. And sort of I feel like when you're starting out, like I was very guilty of it, you're sort of, as soon as someone takes an interest in your music, you're like, it's completely mind blowing. You can't really comprehend why anyone is interested in it. And then I think you kind of need a support structure there, whereas people will just take complete advantage of it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I wanted to try and do, is try and, you know, support artists
Yes.
as much as you can.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about here at Mechanical. I mean, it's all I bang on about it all the time, but we're an artist-led label. We don't do sausage factory. We put good quality music out, and then we build campaigns around that music so that people know about it, and
Yeah,
actually give the artists the respect they deserve, having them on the show, doing treating them like human beings, and it goes a long way. It doesn't cost a copper coin. You know, well, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
okay, it just does cost money, but it doesn't. You know, in terms of being polite and being respectful doesn't cost a copper coin. And there are a lot of labels out there that just don't care about that. And but the great thing is, with experience, you know who they are and you avoid them,
yeah.
and that's just
Indus- yeah, Industrial Techno Union it was.
right. There you go.
That's it.
Named and
Yeah, I
shamed.
just thought that was going to annoy me if I couldn't do it. No, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, fuck that.
speaking about doing labels properly, then can you tell me about your label? Then tell me about how it kind of got started. What we understand the motivation, but kind of why did you was it was control the kind of for your own music the main driving factor behind you starting the label, or was it something else?
Um, I think it's probably a combination. One, the I mean, the major thing was that I was getting sent a lot of music from people that I really liked, and I felt should be released and people should be able to hear it. And then because I was getting sent all this music, and then I also had music of myself that I wasn't really, labels weren't picking up.
Mm.
So I kind of thought that, you know, why don't I just do it myself? And the very first release was just like an edit I did of like an old jungle track, and just people were interested in it. But I thought I liked it, and the problem is that you might think that you like it, but if no one picks it up, then obviously it puts all that doubt in your mind.
Yep.
But if you have a bit of faith in what you're putting out, then um, you need an avenue to do that, and that was just the way I did it, and it was a lot more straightforward um, than what I thought. Like Bandcamp is, you know, an amazing
Isn't
tool.
it?
Like
Isn't
to
it?
be able to create something and then have it distributed within, you know, minutes is absolutely crazy. And you know, it's really a quality service that they provide.
Yeah.
And you know, we do distribute on Beatport and other places, but I take very little interest in any of that. Bandcamp is where we do all our
Oh,
sales.
brother.
I think it's the best market.
Yeah.
You know, Beatport, the amount of money which has been pumped into Beatport, and it's literally the worst website in the world. It's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
It's completely unusable. If I buy music, I never, ever buy it from Beatport anymore
No.
because it's just so hard to use. You can't find anything. The kickback to the artist is significantly worse than Bandcamp. So
Oh, it's horrific.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it
yeah.
doesn't
So
come
that
through a
was
distributor anyway, so it's not.
yeah,
Already
yeah,
you've had your wings clipped before you've even discussed the how much money a store is taking from the music that you produce. So yeah, no, it's horrific. Speaking of Beatport, actually, we I was looking through Facebook. He posted it up the other day. I didn't even know, and Henry had posted something up about them changing the goalposts again for hard techno. So I was like, "Oh, this is interesting,"
all
but
right,
it
okay.
seemed quite positive. So I was like, "Oh, okay." So essentially, what he'd said is they taken out all of the screechy, hard, 160 BPM like neo rave, and put it in a category for hardcore. Yeah, finally, finally, you get it, Beatport. Finally, you understand. But,
Yeah,
and there's a big but here. Turns out they haven't moved it all because I've looked in the hard techno and it's all still 160 BPM screechy neo rave hardcore.
yeah.
So
All that from working with my distributor, it's all that categorization is all done by the artist. So obviously that's sorry, done by the
by
label.
the label, yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
it's a
it's all
drop down menu that you have a choice of
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
putting in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's all at the discretion of the label and how they interpret it. So obviously that comes down to how they want to market it or what they see as it falls into that genre. But yeah, because I used to do everything as hard techno, and then obviously I wouldn't. Yeah,
a couple of
God,
years
it's just
ago, it got
it's
to a
just a
point where
mind
it's like,
all the genres. Yeah, it's just a minefield all the genres and trying to categorize everything. I've tried. I always was very guilty of doing that with the label and doing that with my music, and now I've tried to sort of move away from that in a sense. But
but don't you think it
it's
should be
kind of
easier
hard.
though? It should be easier than it is, surely. I mean,
Yeah,
you only have to listen to a particular style of techno. Yes, okay, there are many subgenres of all kinds of music. Um, but we kind of, as producers, as connoisseurs, we kind of get an understanding of what needs to go where. And it's fairly obvious that the stuff that's kind of dominating the hard techno chart at the minute isn't hard techno, it's hardcore. It's always been hardcore. But it was only Rebecca that was kind of pushing the hardcore label. Everyone else was like, "Oh, this is quite nice. We're getting, we're getting chart positioning in hard techno. Let's just stay in hard techno." And
yeah, yeah.
it was a massive hijack. But listen,
When I started, I've only been producing for I don't know 6 or 7 years now. But when I started, or it was still very um, dominated by minimal and hard techno was like d.a.v.e and
yeah,
uh, SNTS when they were just starting out. Like that was hard techno. So then what I was producing fell into that. So it was just a harder style of techno. Whereas now, people who would classify what is hard techno now would say that that older DAX stuff is like almost verging on minimal, but it's all changes in terms of how hard people's perception of how hard the
yeah,
music is.
sure, yeah.
But it's a minefield. But
Yeah,
um,
yeah, but it's a minefield that's being kind of dictated to by a particular store, and that's and I do want to go on the record. I have been on the record to say the same thing, and I just want to reiterate it. I have no problem with this kind of style of techno, no problem at all.
yeah,
I have plenty of friends who make it, and I have lots of respect for them as artists, and they're doing amazing things for the scene, and it is a pleasure to see them kind of growing and and progressing and with the productions, and their production values gets better and better every time. And there is a lot of talent in that pool. It's just where you put that pool is where I kind
yeah,
of have an issue, really. It's not about the actual music or who's writing it. Everyone has a right to express themselves however they want to express themselves. For me personally, it's not my vibe. I've said it before, say it again. It's just I'm more of a 16 percussion guy. I like to feel a groove in what I do, and in fact, I'm actually pulling back slightly and kind of moving more towards the kind of you know, percussive kind of almost tribal kind of feel. And that's kind of where it's just what floats my boat. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
So I have no issue with it. But the change in the way that Beatport are doing things, I'm all for it. So
yeah,
neo rave is definitely neo rave. Hardcore is definitely hardcore. Go and put it in there. You're still going to do amazingly well, artists, and you're still going to have huge success with the music that you produce. And it just frees up the space for the kind of percussive, harder edged side of the raw kind of techno feel to be able to kind of breathe a little bit more. And I think that's what we need. We just need a little bit of oxygen, really, in
yeah.
what we do. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even like that, the neo rave term, that was
It's
coming
brand
about
new, that, yeah.
like when I was very first starting. But even from like, because I was really interested in that because it was like a sort of a weird mix of like that old school like acid town with like harder techno, and I thought it was really cool and interesting. But it very very quickly fell into you know, hardcore and like verging on bounce in some
Yeah,
instances, like
yeah.
just ridiculous speed. And I really don't enjoy um, the like triplet kicks underneath, like where it's like I don't feel like there's any. It kind of feels all over the place to me, and I think the thing about techno is that it can be very driving, but there's always like a solid line, which is obviously the kick
Yeah.
and the dominance of the kick. But I feel like that a lot of that is lost, and it's also reflective in how difficult it is to mix stuff like that, and
Mm.
also you can't blend and transition it. So now a lot of the mixing is just one drop to another, and it's almost like EDM style mixing, and so you lose a lot of, for me, like through DJing, the most important part of a set or DJing is the blend of two tracks. Like that is what you're doing. If you're just going from one drop to another, you might as well just be, using a CD player, or
Yeah.
you're not actually like transitioning between one track and another, and almost like, and then creating a third or a fourth track within that scope. So that's where I think the negative of it is because I think the actual skill of the DJs is slightly being lost because it's these huge, huge rooms and it just goes from one big drop to another, and there's no transition and there's no skill in it really. And obviously there is, to perform in front of 10,000 people and be able to do it cleanly, there is skill in that,
Mm.
but it's not the true essence of what I think
Yeah.
DJing is transitioning from one track to the other and how you can do that. And I think that is a bit of a shame that is being lost, and that as an art form or as a skill is kind of being ignored now.
Yeah, yeah, I'm here for that. Definitely, yeah. Right, so moving on to your productions then, buddy. What was the catalyst that kind of got you moving in terms of your picking that kind of percussive vibe? Because I just get, for me, I feel your stuff because it's very close to kind of what I'm all about, and I get a lot of love out of that kind of percussive feel. Have you always been into the percussive vibe, or did you start off somewhere else?
Um, yeah, I've always just been. I mean, I'm a drummer. I was a drummer, so
Ah, yeah, that explains a
that
lot.
that's the realm that I'm coming from. I used to listen to a lot of metal and heavy music. I still do now, and a lot of drum and bass, like hard drum and bass, jungle and stuff. So I've always listened to percussive music, and I've got into techno from listening to a lot of sort of like early 2000s percussive tribal type stuff, and then I went and saw Dax play at Awakenings. I don't know, 2013, 2014, something like that, and was just
Mm.
completely blown away by that sort of new style of his
Yeah.
techno, and then also mixing it in with a lot of the older stuff and sort of giving all that older stuff a real boost that if you listen to the records now, they lack it. They don't hold up against new records.
Mm.
So that was the catalyst, really. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I think a lot of it in the start was trying to recreate that sound, and then through that, sort of developing my own kind of style. And it's again what you talked about. It's strong grooves, strong rhythms, a lot of drum focused sounds, but then kind of with a harder industrial side. Because when I first started, I was very, very industrial,
Hmm.
um, very, very heavy sounds, and then it's sort of grooved out a bit more now. But yeah, like drums. I can sit all day and make drums, synth and bass.
Yeah.
That's my downfall. Really, I find it very boring.
Right. Well,
There's certain stuff which I enjoy doing, but in terms of that sound production, I find it very laborious and boring. Whereas I think with the drums, I get a lot more enjoyment out of it, and you instantly get the rhythm of a track from the drums.
yeah.
Whereas the synths don't really bring that, or like the mid range or the bass line. So yeah, that's just always the route I've gone down. Yeah.
So in terms of like drum patterns, how are you getting that going? Because I've got the TR8S up there, and then but in all honesty, I'm an Ableton producer. I don't know if you are, but I started using Ableton about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Before that, I was a Logic user for like 22 years, and it's just the difference is incredible. Although Logic is fantastic for mix downs, absolutely brilliant, can't beat it. But the workload, and sort of the way that, especially for drum patterns, being able to build drum patterns in Ableton is just next level. And like I said, I've got the sampler, but I also use I love to use just like randomizers with one shots for like perk one shots and stuff. So I'll get a bunch of one shots, and I've got this wicked little randomizer called Sting. You can get on Max for Life, and it's just wicked, man. You use it with a drum rack, and you just drop all the perks in, and then it just
Yeah.
randomizes. You can put swing grooves on it. It's just fab. I mean, I'll send you a link to it later when we finish.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I've
have
been
you?
on
Is
a
there anything like that that you've got going on that is like your go-to thing?
Well, I've been on a ripped version of Ableton since I started, so I've never had the advantage of a Max for Live.
You've been on what? Sorry.
Like a pirate copy of Ableton. I've never paid
All
for
right.
it. So I've been using that since I started, and then
Brilliant.
I updated to the 11, but again, it's a pirate copy.
Right.
But I mean, that's probably not good. But fuck it, Ableton have got enough money. I don't think they need my extra.
I'm sure they're not going
But
to be knocking your door down. Don't worry.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, so is it just
every,
have you got hardware gear, or is it more of a kind of, you got a workflow that you like to use inside the door?
I've got some. So I've got a very old Roland R8, which I do some stuff on. I find it quite hard to use, though.
Mm.
To be honest, the majority of the stuff I do in the box.
Yeah. Me too.
Or
I'm
or
not
I've
gonna.
got a yeah. I mean, I that's the way I've always done it, and I've never been in a position to sort of move into the realm of analog gear. You know, it's a very expensive realm to go in. I tend to spend most of my money on records and
Yeah.
updating my DJ stuff because
Yeah.
although I love producing, DJing is, that's the reason I got into producing was
Yeah.
so I could get more DJ stuff. So that is my priority, and that's what I find the most enjoyment of. But I've also started doing a lot more using drum pads and actually drumming rhythms in now, and doing it through that because I find that I find it easier to take a rhythm that I've got in my head and put it
Yeah.
into something like that than try and paste it into Ableton or anything. But a
Sure.
lot of
Yeah.
what I do is I pull out old breaks, or rhythmic loops, and then manipulate them within Ableton, bring down the transition and move the wave points around and put different effects on it and sort of pull the rhythm out of samples and then use that and layer it up alongside, standard, 909s and stuff. So I don't think I've got a very orthodox style of production. I've never done any lessons, music production classes. I did, occasionally I used to dip in and out of YouTube and watch a few, people doing stuff to try and get a grip of how to do stuff. But I've
properly.
always found it very hard to just sit and watch something. And so I'll watch the first 5 minutes and then I'll get sort of hooked in and then I'll forget
Yeah.
about it and I'll just sort of go off on a tangent. And a lot of what I use for my drum patterns, which is sort of the sort of style which that I've developed as an operator on Ableton, and
Operator
then
fab. Yeah.
pitch it into white noise or white noise
Yeah.
looped, and then I use that as like it's just got a really nice slap to it,
It has,
almost like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
The
a mid
FM on that
range,
is wicked as well.
yeah, like a mid range hat, but yeah, that took me a lot of sort of trial and error just trying to find that. But yeah, I'll spend hours and hours and hours on kicks and on hats and on everything, and it's just a constant struggle of trying to find, the
Yeah,
perfect sound and
yeah,
then
yeah.
making it all together. But yeah, every time I jump on, I end up doing something different. I don't really have a sort of formula for how I do it. I know
Mm.
I've got go-to things that I use all the time, certain plugins and for creating my drum sound. Like I use like compressors and delays and stuff to sort of give it a bit more movement. But yeah, it's all done in Ableton, to be perfectly honest. More just a case I'm interested in getting into it, but it's just a lot of money, and life has
The only,
more
I mean,
priorities than buying drum machines and
yeah, that's it.
stuff.
That's it. And I mean, in terms of technicals and hardware and patch bays and all of that other stuff that you need to know in order to actually go down that road. Um, it really is a small percentage of it. And as long as in terms of producing music, and I said this before a few times. For me, the story is more important than the technicals. The actual being able to tell a
Mm,
story in music means a lot more, because if you can't tell a story, if it doesn't come from your heart, if you don't believe in what you're writing, if what you're writing takes you, you know, an entire week just to come up with a loop that you're happy with, then it's not right, and you should probably dump it and start
yeah,
something else, because that's what
yeah,
this is. This is in the underground. We feel our music. We don't do it for the paycheck. So if you're
yeah, yeah.
if you can't do that, if you can't sit down and start writing patterns and going, I'm really feeling that, I'm going to drop that in there, and I wonder what that would sound like if I did this, and no amount of technicality is going to teach you that.
I know a lot of people who've spent crazy money on synth and drums and producers and stuff, and then if you're sitting down with them, and then it always comes back to Ableton, or it always comes back to the door, or it
Yeah,
always comes back to one piece of kit. And I
yeah,
think a lot of the creativity side is that obviously you need to be comfortable with what you're doing. And if I was to buy a new bit of kit, it's going to take me it's like it's a new instrument, isn't it? It's going to take you a lot of time to get used to it, get comfortable with it, and then it's only when you're at that stage that you can be truly creative with it. Whereas with Ableton now, I've been using it for so long now, I'm instantly able to get into that creative zone. Whereas, and I think that's what puts me off moving into a lot of like analog stuff or buying analog stuff, is that I have such limited time at the moment. I work full time,
yeah,
going out DJing on the weekends, like my production. I've got very limited time to be doing it. I don't actually have time at the moment to be learning how to produce, an organic modular synth sound. I just don't have the time for it. And to be honest, I'm not at that stage where I'm so done with what I can produce at the moment.
Yeah.
I think if I was able to do this, full time, I could invest a lot more time in doing that. And obviously, that is the end goal at some point to be able to do that. But unfortunately, I'm not in a position to be able to do that at the moment. So I've got to be realistic about my time and use my time effectively. And at the moment, Ableton does everything I need to
Yeah.
do, and I think I'm still able to produce good music using that. I do feel like I'm getting towards the position where I'm looking for new sources of sound.
Mm.
So I think that's probably the realm that I'll go down. Is probably more looking at modular and looking at how I can do more in terms of sound design.
Okay.
Uh, because I think in terms of arranging music or putting patterns together, I don't feel like I'm needing to do anything new. It's more like the development of the sound and creation of the sound where I can sort
Mm.
of expand my knowledge a bit more.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's interesting you say about the modular because for me, modular doesn't interest me at all. I've got
Yeah,
no interest in it. If somebody bought me a Euro rack, then fine, I'll have a play with it. But I'm not interested. It's far too much of an absolute head fuck for me.
yeah.
I'd rather
I think,
leave
I
that
mean,
well. I've got friends
yeah,
who do. Obviously, Henry's really he's got all kinds of bits and pieces in his studio. But I think if you've grown as an artist through that, then it's easier to kind of transition into those things. But there's some really
yeah,
clever people doing some really clever things with modular stuff. I know some personally some people who are doing great things with them. But for me, it's like I need to get what's in here into my computer,
yeah,
and that's it.
yeah.
So
I think, I think,
overcomplicating it.
I think a lot of it as well is that there's kind of, you know, I mean, I'm very guilty of feeling the pressure of what other people are doing, and so I
Yeah.
see other people doing, using modular or using kit, and I think, well, I should be doing that. I should be doing that and trying that. And so I'm very, very guilty of that. And so I think that probably is a big part of it because I'm not technically minded in terms of computers and stuff. And so I'm almost positive that I would buy it all. And then within 2 weeks, I'd be sick of it. And it would
Anyone
just,
want to buy? Anyone want to buy a Euro rack?
yeah,
Yeah.
it would just sit there just in the corner of the room. So I'm conscious of that. And it's almost like a constant battle between whether to even bother with it. But again, I know
We,
people who've gone down that route and then found it completely useless and not been able to do anything on it, not been able to be creative on it, and then they've just come back to Ableton. And I know a few people who've done that, and so I'm not. It's not. It used to. A couple of years ago, I was really obsessed with it. I was like, right, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to buy loads of kit. I'm going to do all this, and then now I'm thinking that I don't. It's not. I don't think it's necessary. I think a lot of the problem is with particularly among my generation is that obviously everything's all over Instagram and Facebook and whatever, and it's a constant battle for who's got this, who's got that. Hey, what are you doing? Are you doing it right? Is it. And that is a constant battle, and it's hard. It's easy to get sucked into that, and
yeah.
so that's something that I'm trying to avoid at the moment because it's not good for your mental health, and it's not good for your bank balance either.
No, no. The thing is, you found your sound. That's the thing. Is if you were like if you were somebody who was just starting out in the kind of industry and you didn't really have a full kind of understanding of what it is you wanted to do, where you wanted to go, then you could kind of experiment with that. But when you're in a position where you're like, I mean, I don't know how many EPs you've got out, but we're talking. I've easily got 3,000 EPs out there now, and it's like this overkill for a start. But it's like, when you've got that kind of music out, you are eventually going to find a sound which you just sit on and you settle on. And if you
Yeah,
found that sound, and that sound, it can be achieved through the use of Ableton Simpler and a drum rack and a few other inbox synths that are just you go to it every time and you understand the synthesis, how the synthesis works, wavetables, all that kind of thing. You really don't need to be spending thousands and thousands of, or sometimes tens of thousands of pounds on
yeah,
things that quite
yeah.
honestly aren't going to make any difference to your sound.
No, and I
other
think it's
people.
a lot of it is a vanity project
Yeah, that's it.
unless you're very technically minded. And so, no, I agree. I agree. I think my problem is that I'm very I worry about sort of stagnating, and I worry about far too much probably. And
Yeah.
I think it's you constantly judging yourself against other people because of the social media hype that we live in, or I live in.
That can be
And so
dangerous in itself, can't it?
yeah, I think it
Being
is. And
worried
I
about
think
what others are doing can be very dangerous, because then you end up getting in a situation where you end up with nefarious stuff going on, chart manipulation, all that kind of stuff that
exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
turns.
I know people, and I've spoken to people about this who have actively shown their studio setup as having all this gear.
Mm.
They don't know how to use any of it,
No.
and they fully admitted to me they don't use any of it. They don't
Yeah.
know how, it's literally just for the look. So yeah, it's trying to detach yourself away from all that and just focus on what you're doing
Yeah.
is very important, and that's what I would always say to any people just starting out producing is just stay true to what you are interested in what you think sounds good, because it's very easy. I could have got swept up in this. We're talking about earlier, like the hard techno as it is now.
Mm.
A lot of those artists who are doing amazingly well at the moment, selling out tens of thousand venues, have
Yeah.
all released Hazard. A lot of them used to come to me for production tips, production advice. So I was sort of right in the middle of all that, but I didn't really get on board with the direction it was going. And obviously, part of me is massively bitter about that, because I could be, playing in front of 10,000 people tonight rather than sitting talking about how bitter I am on a
Yeah,
webcam.
but then, if you're in that position where you're kind of looking at everybody kind of making a career for them, because I'm in the same position. I watch people making a career for themselves in the hardest side of the scene. Um, if you then follow suit and go, I'm going to jump on that bandwagon. Are you happy on that bandwagon? Are you
Well,
going to be
exactly. Yeah.
creatively? Are you going to your juices going to be flowing? Are you going to be getting in the studio every day and going, I'm going to make a fucking banger? For me, I wouldn't be. I'd be pushing myself through it daily. I'd be turning the computer off at night and going, I'll have a look at that tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I will literally, like, there'll be nights where I'm lucky I can do this. There'll be nights where I'll start a project at 10 o'clock and then it'll be 6 a.m. and I'll be like, fuck, okay, better go to bed. And that's because I love what I do. I really enjoy the music I write now. Whereas if I was to just if I was to look at, like, look at all the money that they're making in trance. You know what? I'm going to make some trance music. I could probably do it. In fact, I can do it, but there'd be no love in there, and
Yeah.
it would be soulless. So
Yeah. It's like I always talk, and not so much the production, but in terms of DJing, I always say that it's like playing FIFA. It's like if you play FIFA on amateur or semi-pro,
mm,
it gets to a certain level or a certain time period where it just becomes boring and
mhm.
monotonous, and there's no challenge involved. And if you don't consistently challenge yourself, then you don't get anything back or any reward from it.
Definitely.
And I feel that's the same in production and the same in DJing. If you're not challenging yourself, you'll just get into the monotony of going through the motions of everything you're doing. Um, and so I think you do have to try and stay true to yourself, and you try and just have
Yeah.
to say that this is what I've always done. This is the path I've chosen to go down. And
Mm.
if it kicks off, it kicks off. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You never know. I mean, you look at all those, Henry and Sterling Moss and Jamie and Benji. All those guys who were massive at that time, and then there was a massive, a 10, probably nearly 20-year, 15-year period where they weren't really doing a huge amount.
Mm.
When techno was all minimal and stuff, and now they're on a massive resurgence
That's right.
because people are getting back in touch with the roots of the music, of the culture, particularly the UK sound. So I think part of it, you have to be patient, and I'm not a patient person at all. But that's why I always have to remind myself is that you do have to be patient, and everything comes around, and
Yeah, yeah. It's when the
eventually
gratitude
you'll.
kicks in, though, isn't it? You being grateful for the things that you have got is sometimes something we all kind of neglect. And I
Yeah,
sometimes have to sit back and go, you know what? I'm really like I look at the things that I've achieved, and I have to give myself a bit of love and go, you know what? I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had, and I'm
yeah,
grateful for anything
yeah.
that kind of comes my way. And eventually, these things do happen. But yeah, we're all on our own journey at the end of the day. But you know, some
100%.
trends are kicking off more than others right now, but we just don't know what the future holds. We really don't.
Yeah, yeah,
And for all we know, you know, it's all going to spin around again. So,
yeah, yeah.
you
But
know,
like we saying about being grateful, like if I'd said to myself this time, last year at the start of the year before Trezor, before Fold, that later on this year you're going to play Trezor, you're going to play Fold, and you're going to go on tour to India. I
mm,
would have said that's mental. Like
yeah,
that, I can be so satisfied with what I've done, and now on the other side of it, I'm like, right, well, what's happening now?
what's
What's the
next?
next?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's part of my mentality that I've always got. That I'm never satisfied with what's happening, because I'm always putting a goal, and then once you get that goal, you're always like, oh well, once I've done that, I
sure.
can be content. But you're never satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm never satisfied. So it's always going to be a continuous striving for something better. But I don't. I mean, in
But there's
some
nothing
ways,
wrong with that, though, Alex. I don't
no,
think
no, I
there's
don't
nothing
think
wrong
it
with that
is.
at
But
all.
it's being trying to be positive around it as well, and
Sure.
not letting it sort of get you down that you're not achieving what you think that you should be achieving. But I
Yeah.
think that is one of the struggles, particularly at the moment.
But you wouldn't be a creative producer if you didn't have that feeling, I don't think. I think we all kind of just
Yeah, probably not. No.
never satisfied, and I think just recently, I mean, only literally just recently, I've since the resurgence of Mechanical, I've kind of sat down and reassessed everything I was doing. I spent a long time on the dance floor at the end of last year, rather than just kind of only going to gigs because I'm being paid. I was going
Yeah,
to raves and actually going and just standing on dance floors, really analyzing in my head what is it that these people want, why are they here, what's their main
yeah,
purpose, is it to get out of their trees and kind of jump around? Not necessarily. There's a lot of people there that do genuinely go because they just want to feel that fucking techno in their heart, in the middle of the floor at that sweet spot in the dance floor. um, and then there was a whole load of things that started going through my head, and I was almost like taking mental notes of kind of what worked, what didn't, and then bringing that back into the studio. I've got to say, since doing that, in all honesty, I'm actually genuinely for probably the first time ever, I'm really happy with what I'm doing right now.
yeah,
But there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done. But essentially, I don't think we're ever going to be fully. You know what? That's a fucking bad. I cannot wait to release that. There's always,
yeah,
6 months down the line, you listen to it and you're like, oh, could have done that differently or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's interesting talking about that. Is that I really struggle with going to events now. I struggle standing on the dance floor. Not if I go to, but if I go to house and D&B or anything like that, I'm fine
Hmm.
because I'm not zoned into it. But with techno, I find it very difficult to just enjoy it for what it is.
Right.
I tend to analyze everything, and you know, I don't get lost in it the same way that I used to. But I think
Yeah.
that's because I've spent a lot of time sort of on the other end of it now.
That's it. Yeah.
Um, I've almost ruined it
Yeah.
for myself
That's it. Yeah.
from like a raving perspective. I don't get the same buzz or feeling that I used to.
Mm.
And I think that is just purely because I've spent a lot of time, in the booth and, playing and when you're playing, you analyze. I feel like I'm analysing absolutely everything which is going on in front of me.
Yeah.
And although you do get lost, you can get lost in it. I'm very like sort of focused on it. Just focused on it, like 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours will pass in an instant because I'm so focused in on what I'm doing.
Mm.
And so now when I go to events, it's very, I tend to zone in on what's going on the DJ and what they're doing, but not from like a musical perspective, more from like a technical perspective, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
takes a lot of like the joy out of it, I think.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
something that I've found is a bit of a bummer from that perspective of it, but
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that'll
Well,
come out
listen,
one day.
we all do it. We all do it. Speaking of like analyzing things, are there any kind of like artists or DJs that you've kind of got you got a real love for at the minute? I'll give you a start for 10 because I hydraulics was interesting for me because I'd known about slam. Obviously, everyone knows about slam, but I hadn't really spent too much time looking into just how technical they were as DJs. And then
Yeah,
Henry's like, when he sent that the mass like WhatsApp out
yeah, yeah.
saying, "Listen, guys, you're gonna have these decks because like with the six of the Pioneer 3000s are going in the main room because Slam needs 6 decks." And I'm
No,
like,
it was eight.
"Who
It
needs
was eight.
6 decks? Who
It
needs
was
six
eight, wasn't
decks?
it?
Huh?
I'm sure it was eight.
Was it 8? I thought it
It
was
had
6.
four each.
All right, 6, 8. Listen, I thought to myself, okay, all right, well, if I don't know how you can use 8 decks, but okay, let's see.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but then I watched them DJ, and then I realised why they need 8 decks. And I mean, if you're from a purely from a geek DJ point of view, that was possibly the best school lesson I ever had in my fucking life.
Mhm.
Just watching the technicality of what they can kind of do with that kind of machinery is just
Yeah.
it blew my mind.
It's,
So
it's,
is there anyone else that you anything you've got, or you might even be on the same vibe as me with Slam?
I mean, it's absolutely mental when you think about it. And I don't know the intricacies of how they actually do it because I tried to talk to them about it after, but
Yeah.
um, I was too pissed to take it in. But they're playing, so they're essentially playing two individual sets, two completely different sets. Nothing is connected in between them, but they're
Mm,
playing perfectly in time,
mm,
transitioning everything. It's absolutely mental when you actually think about it. And now there is now a lot of back to backs where people are doing that,
mm.
and I don't know how much syncing is involved in terms of actually how much beat matching is going on. But even so, like the levels to be able to be having, you playing 3 decks and then someone else is playing 2 decks and everything's up at once to have that and it's not just a wall of horrible noise is absolute mind blowing. And until I give it a go, I don't know how they even go about it. But yeah, that slam set, yeah. I mean, I didn't see any of it because I was playing, but
Oh,
I've
you were
heard.
on at the same time, weren't you? Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They've been playing with Frazier, been doing some back to backs. And those two they've been playing together for probably 20, 25 years. But then
Mm,
for him to come in there and then also be doing the same thing, I think is mad. I mean, he's a DJ who I really respect at the moment. I
mm.
think he's pushing a really really strong sound, similar to mine. Influenced by um, a lot of like the older rolling percussive sounds, but then with sort of like new elements.
Yeah.
In terms of producers, um, my probably favorite producer who's released on Kazad is he's called Virov, and he's from Berlin, and he's very stripped back, hard
Mm,
percussive. But the latest EP that he released on Kazad, I've been playing those tracks like mixed in. There's like 3 tracks I've been mixing them all together for the past year, 2 years. As soon as I heard them, I wanted to sign them.
yeah.
It's just very my vibe because you can sort of layer them into each other, and you can really really build up energy with them, and you can sort of drop in the kicks from each one, and you just get a really good relentless driving power, which is what I really enjoy. And
Yeah.
uh, so production wise, although he's not very on it with it. I think he could do a lot more to sort of put himself out there. He's kind of like he's got a lot of other stuff going on. he's actually a bodybuilder as well. So
Right. So yeah, he's always in the
kind of
gym
like
then.
not it's not his main focus, but he's so talented. I feel like he could definitely push it a lot more. And I was able to meet him last time we went out to Berlin, so that was really good to connect with him. And there's another guy, CTSD, he's an Australian guy, but he's based in Berlin. He's released a lot of tracks on Outrage, which is a Berlin-based label. But again, he's got really sort of strong grooves, sort of bouncy kicks and basses. My thumb does a lot of stuff with. Um, yeah, I think the young production of people based in Berlin at the moment is really really strong. They've got a really strong developing sound, which I really like, and I think that's where a lot of the production that I play now seems to be coming from.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think that
Wicked.
yeah, it's really strong. There's a couple of other people like there was the new Mon and Black various artists that they did, and there's a guy called LPV on there and a guy called Jera, and they're doing really, really good. Again, it's all this sort of percussive stuff. It all just
Yeah.
comes into stuff that I play basically, and
Yeah.
they're the same tracks that I come back to in my sets. That if I feel that the energy isn't there, or if I want to dip into something I know is just going to have a big impact, then I'll dip into these guys, and I can go in and I can just search for them and just pull in one of their tracks instantly, and I know that I'm going to get something good, and that's what I look. That's what I look for. Is that if you can dip into someone's discography, and you know you can pull anything out of it. You know, Henry's one of those guys. You can pull anything of his into it, or Chris Liveray, or someone like that, or Ben Sims, or
Yeah.
Blas Klein, like those old guys. You can pull any of those tracks in, and you know that they're going to do damage. And I
Mm.
think that's what I look for in when I'm looking at what I'm going to fill out my track lists with, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Wicked. Wicked. Well,
But
yeah.
you would from an outside perspective, you would think that our sound is dead, but actually, if you cut beneath the surface, there's a lot of
It's very
really
much
good,
alive.
strong
Yeah.
producers.
All right. So, just before I let you go, then, mate, what have you got? Have you got anything you want to shout about coming up? Releases, DJ appearances, all that kind of stuff.
So I'm doing my Northern Groove Association event in Leeds. We've got a couple of local DJs, Cassia and d.a.v.e playing, and then myself. So that's at Wharf Chambers on the 24th of May.
Cool.
And then I'm also doing a collaboration in Leeds with Rogue Puppet. Um, Let me look at what the date is. I think it's the 14th of June
I've got it up
that
here.
I'm doing with. Um,
Where is it?
let me look.
I did see it on the screen. Hang on.
Yeah, 14th of June.
Yeah.
Bringing a guy over from Dublin, Aero, who's released on Kazan before. Great
Mm.
eyes, great DJ. Bringing him over for it, and then the Rogue Puppet residents. Release wise, I've got another EP coming out on Hydraulics, which is going to
Yeah.
have a
You
remix
have.
from Voice Drone on it. So that's coming soon. Not
Oh,
100% sure.
Lasher. Voice Drone, ladies and gentlemen, is the guy that
Yeah,
owns the wonderful Fold in London.
yeah. So I've been a big fan of obviously Fold, and then met him a few times, and then also been a fan of his productions. He's done a lot of stuff with Gareth Wild as well,
Yeah.
which I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed. So to bring him on, and he's put a really different twist and feel
That's
on
wicked.
my music. So that was what I really wanted to have on the EP, and so I'm hoping that that'll do well. And it's a pleasure to be back on Hydraulics.
Well, mate, we can't wait to hear it. We can't wait to hear it. And with that, I'm going to let you go. And I all that's left to say is thank you, mate, for coming on. And I know I've kept you for a for a minute chin wagging, but
Ah, don't
it
worry,
was
it's been good.
worth
I've
it, bro. It
enjoyed
was
it.
worth it. It was worth
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I've
But
enjoyed it. Pleasure
yeah,
to talk to. I always say, not a lot of my friends are into techno or in the world of techno, so
yeah,
I enjoy the rare
yeah,
opportunity to
yeah.
speak to
Let's
people
just geek.
about
We're
it. Really
geeking out,
interested.
man. We're geeking out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, well, listen,
definitely.
man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Cheers.
All right, thanks a lot, mate.